Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with a look at the day's headlines. The government is bringing in one of its big guns to sell lawmakers on the administration's multi-billion-dollar extra budget to help young Koreans into work. But with a parliament deeply divided, will the Prime Minister's plea make a difference? An embarrassing blunder that could cost a company dear. Samsung Securities scrambles to make amends after it goes to pay its employees a $1 dividend, but instead mistakenly gives them almost 3 billion shares. Plus, in a series of furious tweets, US President Donald Trump warns of a big price to pay for an apparent deadly chemical weapons attack in Syria. We start today at the National Assembly here in South Korea, where the government is stepping up efforts to get its multi-billion US dollar supplementary budget through Parliament. The Prime Minister is scheduled to address Parliament on the budget this afternoon, but the deadlock there is casting doubt on whether the schedule can actually go on as planned. For more, we connect live to our political correspondent Kim Min-ji, who's standing by for us at the National Assembly. So, Min-ji, have there been any new developments?
Well, Mark, floor leaders of the major parties held closed-door meetings earlier this morning to thrash out their differences, but no agreement was made there. Now, after the meeting, the floor leaders told reporters that no developments have been made towards normalizing Parliament. Now, they're scheduled to meet again in half an hour's time, along with the National Assembly Speaker, to thrash out their differences in an attempt again. Now, the National Assembly, as you said, has been at a standstill since the start of the April session, which was last Monday, with rival parties at odds over contentious bills that need to be handled and talks on the constitutional amendment. For the past week, rival lawmakers have been playing the blame game, so at this point it's unclear whether the Prime Minister will be able to give his speech as scheduled. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party and the centrist Padamita Party have said they won't participate unless the ruling party is willing to make concessions. So we'll have to see the outcome of the meeting.
Yeah, that's right. But if they do manage to hammer out some kind of agreement and the Prime Minister goes on to make this policy speech that's scheduled for 2 p.m. this afternoon, what is he likely to emphasize and what are the prospects for the passage of this multi-billion-dollar extra budget?
Well, the Prime Minister is expected to call for cooperation from all parties for the swift passage of the nearly $3.8 billion US supplementary budget bill. Now, his speech is expected to last about 30 minutes, and he will likely address the country's youth unemployment woes and stress that the extra budget is needed to tackle that issue. Now, he is also expected to say the budget will be used to breathe life into ailing regions hit by corporate restructuring. But even if the speech does go on as planned, the passage itself isn't going to be easy. Opposition parties haven't been fond of drawing up a supplementary budget, saying it's only been 3 months since this year's full budget was passed, and they accuse the government and the ruling party of pumping in money to woo voters ahead of the local elections in June. And on top of that, this new budget comes less than a year since the government's first extra budget was implemented, with some parties questioning the effectiveness of the extra budget and saying that the impact of the previous supplementary budget has to be assessed first. Now, that's all I have for now, but hopefully I'll have some positive developments in our later newscast. Mark.
Well, thank you very much for that report, Min-ji. We will be speaking once again to our Kim Min-ji at the National Assembly during our next newscast at noon Korea time. Now, in other news, Samsung Securities has admitted to mistakenly paying its employees stock dividends, prompting the brokerage house's share prices to collapse. They collapsed strongly on Friday. For more on this trading error and what the company plans to do to try and make amends, Lee Myung-bak reports.
Samsung Securities had planned on Friday to pay dividends of 1,000 won, or just under $1, to each of its employees under a stock ownership plan. However, in a colossal blunder, the company mistakenly paid dividends of 1,000 shares for each share owned by an employee, which would amount to 2.8 billion shares worth well over $100 billion. The blunder caused the firm's stock price to plunge by more than 11% during trading on Friday, but it recovered a bit before the market's close. According to an official who spoke on the condition of anonymity, while Samsung Securities fixed the errors, some employees had already sold the stocks. Questions were raised on whether the employees could actually sell the mistakenly deposited shares, which technically do not exist on the stock market, and how they could sell the shares without reporting it to the brokerage. In addition to the sheer size of the blunder, the orders were naked short selling, an option that was banned in 2008 in the wake of the collapse of the Lehman Brothers and the global financial meltdown. In an approved short sell or cover short selling, traders must borrow a stock before they sell it short. However, a naked short seller is not required to borrow the securities in time to make delivery. On Sunday, Samsung Securities said it will make amends to all those affected by the mistake. CEO Koo Sung-hoon said the brokerage will do its utmost to regain the confidence of its customers and take firm action against moral hazard cases involving its workers. Reflecting on the gravity of the situation, the firm said restitution will be made as soon as possible without going through long proceedings. The Financial Supervisory Service has launched a special investigation and will take a look into how Samsung Securities could issue non-existent shares and how some of the shares were traded. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, prosecutors are expected to indict former President Lee Myung-bak on this Monday over charges of bribery and embezzlement. Lee, currently facing more than 10 charges, will be South Korea's fourth former president to be put on trial. Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
Former President Lee Myung-bak is expected to be questioned by the court next month following his indictment on Monday. This comes as the former president has so far refused to cooperate with interrogation requests. Lee faces over 10 charges, including accepting bribes of more than $10 million. His charges also include embezzling over $30 million through an auto parts company named DAS, which is expected to secretly own, as well as leaking some 3,000 state documents. He could end up facing even more charges based on further investigation. The prosecution is seeking to freeze Lee's assets linked to the bribery case, and it also plans to indict his wife, son, and other members of his family who are allegedly involved in the case. The former president is denying most of the charges, insisting that prosecutors have no detailed evidence. He'll be South Korea's fourth former head of state to stand in court over corruption charges following Chun Do-hwan, Roh Tae-woo, and Park Geun-hye. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The White House says North Korea has confirmed directly to the Trump administration that it's willing to negotiate its potential denuclearization with the United States. Watchers say the confirmation offers Washington greater assurances that Kim Jong-un is committed to holding a summit with President Trump by the end of May. While a summit had been agreed upon last month, skepticism has persisted as Pyongyang has been silent about the proposed summit ever since. Still, not much is known about the bilateral summit, with White House officials not confirming the location or the agenda for the talks. And President Trump claims China is prepared to take down its trade barriers and the two countries will reach a deal on intellectual property. In a tweet on Sunday, President Trump said China will ease the trade barrier because it's the right thing to do, and that Washington and Beijing can settle trade disputes that have shaken financial markets, consumers and businesses. The tweet doesn't explain why he's optimistic about resolving the escalating clash between the world's two biggest economies. Operations at two of Korea's biggest airports were disrupted this morning due to foggy conditions. Low visibility warning was issued at Incheon International Airport as of 5 a.m. on this Monday. One inbound flight at Incheon International Airport was actually forced to land at another airport, while two domestic flights were also cancelled at Gimpo International Airport. Now, known as the Garlic Girls, the South Korean women's curling team brought A great deal of attention to the sport during the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, and now Korean researchers say they have developed robots that are able to play a curling match against human opponents. Our Park Se-young with more.
A curling stone slides on the ice and knocks the opposition stone from the target circle. The stone was thrown by Curly, a pair of artificial intelligence-driven robots. The skip robot acts as a captain and formulates strategies after inspecting the game situation with its camera. It sends the information to the pitcher robot, which pushes the stone towards the target. Just like AlphaGo, Curly studied thousands of deliveries from curling matches.
Using deep learning based on 160,000 deliveries from more than 1,300 curling matches, the robots can control the direction, speed, and rotation of the delivery.
The robots also learn to take into account the stadium's temperature and humidity, which affect the ice. And for the first time ever, the machines faced human players in a curling game, but fell to a 3-0 defeat.
The curling robots formulated strategies pretty well, but failed to adjust to variables of the ice.
The AI robots will be used for developing strategies and providing training support. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now it's time to take a look at the stories making headlines around the world, and we're going to start with a suspected chemical attack in Syria. US President Donald Trump has lashed out at Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his allies, accusing them of being behind the alleged attack, which is reported to have killed dozens of people, including some children as well. For more on this and other international news, let's turn, as we always do, to our Noah Adam. So Adam, what exactly did President Trump have to say on this matter?
Well, Mark, in a series of tweets on Sunday, he called Assad an animal, adding there would be a big price to pay for resorting to outlawed weapons of mass destruction. Just over a year ago, Trump ordered dozens of cruise missiles to be fired at a Syrian airbase after declaring the Syrian president had used a banned gas on civilians. In regards to the latest incident, a senior White House official said he wouldn't take anything off the table when he was asked if another US missile strike was possible. Medical aid groups say at least 48 people were killed Saturday in the town of Douma by what they described as poison gas. Douma is the last rebel bastion in the eastern Ghouta region, which has mostly now been taken over by Syrian forces. Trump's hardline stance against Assad is nothing new, but what may be a surprise to many is his rare personal criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin for supporting the Damascus government. Both the Syrian and Russian governments have denied launching any chemical attack, calling the reports fake. Iran, another ally of Damascus, also defended the Syrian regime. Russia's foreign ministry said the reports had been fabricated to create a pretext for a possible military intervention in Syria. Moscow's defense of Damascus also comes amid widespread accusations from the West that the Kremlin was behind a nerve agent attack in England. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council will meet on Monday to debate the suspected attack after 9 of its 15 members called for an emergency meeting. A minister in the German city of Muenster says the man who killed 2 people by driving a van into a crowd of people on Saturday acted alone and appears to have had mental health problems. Interior Minister of North Rhine-Westphalia, Herbert Reul, also said Sunday that there was no evidence linking the suspect to a terrorist organization, adding he was a German citizen. The senior prosecutor also said the yet-to-be-identified perpetrator was known to police for making threats, damaging property, as well as fraud and a hit-and-run incident. Police said they were still investigating possible motives, and forensic investigators were scouring the scene of the attack for clues. A 6.1 magnitude earthquake has struck western Japan, leaving at least 4 people with minor injuries and damaging buildings and roads. Japan's meteorological agency said the tremor hit the city of Oda in Shimane prefecture in the early hours of Monday morning local time at a depth of about 10 kilometers. It caused a partial blackout and disrupted water supply, but did not affect the Shimane nuclear power plant. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is in police custody on charges of corruption, becoming Brazil's first current or former leader to be incarcerated. He gave himself up to police on Saturday after days of intense protests from his supporters. Lula da Silva has denied charges of money laundering and bribery and said he was being targeted by his enemies to stop him running for the presidential election in October. The former president currently leads opinion polls, but since his conviction will likely bar him from running, October's election has now been thrown wide open. More unrest is expected for the next few weeks, with more protests demanding his release, as well as a pending court decision that may see its ruling against da Silva reversed.
One of the biggest stories of the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea was the participation of North Korea in the friendly tone struck by the two countries. This optimistic move has been raising hopes of the Korean public, especially those with loved ones in the north. The last separated family reunion took place in October 2015 before inter-Korean relations were frozen. Will the inter-Korean talks this month possibly lead to the resumption of reunions? This is the Korean National Red Cross headquarters in Seoul, which mandates programs dedicated to resolving humanitarian challenges regarding the 38th parallel. It also proposed a separate round of indirect family reunions via video conference to restore family links between separated families. But unfortunately, no video meeting has taken place since 2007. As a result, this place is now filled only with posts, hoping for the next reunion to take place as soon as possible. Jointly produced by the Ministry of Unification and the Red Cross from 2005, the library has over 19,000 video messages from separated family members, greeting families in the north and sharing memories of hometowns and relatives.
Because the surviving separated family members are very old, we have been producing 10-minute video messages for them to keep a record of their voices and appearances. It allows them to send a message to their family in the north, which one day we hope to deliver.
According to the Integrated Information System for Separated Families, some 130,000 separated family members have applied for reunions since 1988, with less than half surviving today. Also, 3,800 of them died last year alone. With the first round of displaced people visiting their homeland in September 1985, only 4,185, or 3.2% of all separated family members, have been reunited through 21 meetings. Once again, no meeting has taken place since 2015. The Moon Jae-in administration has constantly been calling for the resumption of family reunions, even during the high-level talks with the North on January 9th, which were held to encourage its participation in the Winter Olympics. However, Pyongyang demanded a precondition, which was the return of 12 waitresses from a North Korean government-run restaurant in China that entered South Korea in 2016.
We consider the issue of separated families a humanitarian matter, but North Korean authorities regard it as a political one. Therefore, I believe we should demand the resumption of family reunions as a precondition for us to expand exchanges and support the North.
We caught up with Jeon Jin-sung, a displaced person residing in Bupyeong-gu, Incheon. 90 years old this year, he's from Dancheon, Hamgyeongnam-do province and came to the south 69 years ago when he was 22 years old.
My parents didn't dare leave, but still urged me to escape and stay alive. I thought I'll be able to go back in 2 to 3 days, which ended up being nearly 7 decades.
Contrary to what he believed at the time, it was not a temporary farewell, but rather a decades-long wait with no promise of reunion. Thinking of his family and relatives, Jeon volunteered at orphanages and nursing homes his whole life. As a token of appreciation for his service, he was invited to the north and met his uncle near Wonsan in Hamgyeongnam-do province, but not the entire family.
Only 2 members of my entire family are alive now. The rest have passed away already. Therefore, I was very happy to meet my family again, but also felt heartbroken at the same time.
There's another reason why Chun is hoping to meet his family across the border. His wife, also a displaced person from the north, applied for all 21 reunion events, yet never met her family until she passed away 3 months ago.
I thought about my family every day, but they've been all passed away before I could meet them. I know many are skeptical about the next family reunion taking place, but I believe it will. I'm one of the believers.
The vast majority of the displaced people have never met their families on the other side of the peninsula since the division. For them, the government conducted DNA tests and set up a database on their gene information so their offspring can meet future relatives even after their death. Despite the practical limits and long wait, separated families are not losing hope of meeting their kin, based on expectations that inter-Korean ties will improve through the upcoming summit.
The greatest wish for displaced people in the South is to stay in correspondence with their families across the border. I believe it is one of the priorities for the government to deal with regarding separated families.
The issue of separated families is the most urgent and emotional humanitarian matter for the two Koreas, as more Asian Koreans have passed away without a chance of meeting with their relatives on the opposite side of the inter-Korean border. Time is fast running out. Hopefully, this peaceful momentum will continue so they can finally reunite with their families.
Good morning. If you're visiting us in Korea around this time, you need to know it's actually not normal for Korea to have spring flowers covered with snow along with wintry chill. I mean, many had to bundle up tight to enjoy the spring flowers and the blossoms over the weekend. And this morning, Seoul had a low of around 0 degrees Celsius, while Beijing also had a chilly start to the day. But the spring cold will ease starting this afternoon. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 14 degrees Celsius, while Gyeongju and Daegu will make it to 17 degrees this afternoon. Thick fog along the west coast will burn off as the day goes on, but it's more likely that we'll see relatively high levels of fine and ultra-fine dust during the day. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So most of South Korea will notice higher afternoon highs under partly sunny skies. Many parts of North Korea will also have sun and double-digit afternoon highs. And as for the rest of Asia, the summer season starts this week in Manila as the northeast monsoon season is about to end. Meanwhile, Sydney is set for a warm and humid week of above-average temperatures with highs of above 30 degrees Celsius forecast across the city. Heading to North America, the chilly start to April is expected to continue across most of Canada. And as for South America, thunderstorms are likely overnight into early Monday morning in Buenos Aires. Taking you to Europe, most major cities in Europe will have a rainy Monday. Lastly, to Africa, Addis Ababa will have frequent rain along with scattered thunderstorms at times. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, on that note, that's where we're going to leave the news for now. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.
우리 민족들이 힘을 합쳐 통일을 이룩합시다.
South and North Korea are stronger when we are together. The historic moments and the wave of peace created by one Korea stunned the world. The melody of hope sung together and the energetic reconciliation brought the spring of peace to the Korean peninsula. We are one Korea.